Hey guys, let's make some eyeballs. We're gonna use Apoxie Sculpt, which is a modeling compound that hardens in a few hours and fully cures in a day. But before you start, please read the instructions on the containers first. It comes with a part A and B, and you have to mix the equal amount of each until they blend properly. Don't forget to use protective gloves until you are mixing them. It will be ready when the marble pattern disappears. So after you mix the two parts, you can take off your gloves. If you are doing two eyeballs, you can just halve the epoxy, or you can use a measurement tool as well if you want to be more precise. The next step is to form a ball between your palms and place it on a plastic sheet. We can use the end of a paintbrush to form the hole for the iris. Using some water, you can avoid the epoxy to stick on your fingers. You can also smoothen the surface better with wet hands. This will be our base shape. Try to form it to be as perfect as possible. You can take your time because we will have to let it dry. After the epoxy dried, it will be hard as stone. We can then start adding the details of the iris without deforming the base shape. You will need some modeling tools, and you also have to mix a new fresh epoxy, but this time just a little amount. Let's form a long round shape and place it in the hole. Using the modeling tool, you have to blend it in, leaving a hole in the middle for the pupil. If you need, you can add an extra layer. Once you are done, take a thin sharp tool and start adding the details of the iris. It's always good to find a good reference photo that helps you to make it more realistic. You have plenty of time to work on it until the epoxy starts to harden. Okay, this is done. Let's let it dry. Before we start painting, it's better to glue it on something to avoid touching the eyeball later. Take your acrylic paints. Now finally we can start painting. Let's add black for the pupil and the color of your choice for the base color of the iris. Let's start to add white on the rest of the eyeball and add 2-3 more layers of white paint until it gets fully white. You can add a thin white layer on the iris to brighten up the base color. Don't worry, it won't be so bright once it dries. The edge of the iris is always darker. Let's mix some black and white to make that effect. By adding a bit more darker color around the pupil, it will add more depth. Add more highlights using the dry brush technique. And finish it with a very thin layer of bright color and let it dry. This will balance the contrast. Next step is to mix UV resin with black paint and fill the whole of the pupil with that. Cure this under UV light and add one more layer of black resin mix to make the little dome for the pupil. Cure it again, then do some detail fixes if you need to. Once we are happy with it, we can start to build the cornea. We will start adding just thin layers of resin first to avoid having air bubbles. Make sure there is no bubble stuck in the small gaps. Using a lighter will pop most of the bubbles too. Cure it again and add a few more thin layers of resin. Don't forget to cure it after each layer. Repeat this process until you are happy with the shape of the cornea. Now it's time to paint the veins. Grab a small brush and start adding curved lines, then blend them with a thin layer of white paint. Adding a brown, red, yellowish color will make it more realistic as eyeballs are not pure white. We repeat this process a few times to add layer of details. As the last step, cover the whole eyeball with a thin layer of resin and cure it. And here are the eyeballs ready. Hope you liked my video, thanks for watching and happy eyeball making!